Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking member. I think the work you have done on this bill, as I said yesterday, is fairly exceptional, and the time it's taken to get to where we are. I understand the amendment that's being proposed and the goal of it, and I have been one of those that have supported the Deficit Commission that's brought forward some recommendations how to manage this budget. I've supported multiple efforts on this floor to reduce and manage the budget in an overall scheme of how we move down to sustainability for our finances of this country. This is one bill that you have to take into account not only what is being proposed, but what it does and what it will impact. And I'll just use from my state. You know, when you think about Alaska, there's no question when it comes to air travel, there's no other state that has the kind of rural and extended air travel than what we have in Alaska. When you think about the issue I talked about yesterday on essential air services, 44 communities that are affected by the funding to ensure that people who are not next door to any airport, that aren't a few miles from an airport, but in some cases from their airport to a hub, it might be 1,200 miles. So the work and the resources of the essential air services is critical for us to not only conduct business, move people back and forth from communities for medical services, but really is the lifeblood for our communities. This amendment would literally wipe that out or reduce it at such a point that it would be impossible for us to make it economical for some of these airports to operate and some of these flight services that bring the only service to these communities to survive. When you think about next gen, I mean, if we went back to the 08 levels, next gen was just in its beginning stages. This is an important investment, not that the federal government was anxious to get it done right away. We had to, in Commerce Committee, the chairman may remember this, we had to push the federal government to move this forward. Why? Because it was the private sector that came to us. The people in the private sector who came to us and said, it is important that the federal government move this forward, expedite this resource, help us move this new technology forward to help save fuel, save time, increase capacity at our airports, make it a better business operation for the private sector airports. So when I see this amendment, my view it's a job-killing amendment. This wasn't a decision that the Commerce Committee had said, well, let's just move this up a few years because we think the federal government should do this right away. It's because the private sector came to us because they want to invest in this new technology, but they're not going to make the investment until there's certainty from the federal government on their part of this arrangement. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in this bill. So this amendment, from my view, is truly a job-killing amendment. Then I look at the airport improvements, and you know, I was listening to Mr. Chairman, you were talking about the contracted services. I quickly looked at the list that affect Alaska. Kodiak. You know, Kodiak is where the largest Coast Guard base in this country is. Kodiak also has a contracted services tower. Now, I don't know how that will affect the Coast Guard. I would be very nervous about what it might do. This type of amendment may be well-meaning in the sense of how we all are going to sit here, and it's going to be, I left the Budget Committee meeting to come here. The Budget Committee is where we're now talking about how to manage this budget in a holistic way, not nitpick it like this when maybe the amendment may be well-intended to try to get the control of the budget, but may not understand the impact. Again, airport improvements is another piece. Now, I would challenge the individual who sponsored the amendment. If he's been to Alaska, great. I'd love to take him to a couple of those airports where the question, matter of fact, there's a great TV show now, a reality show about flying in Alaska. It's so dangerous to fly in Alaska, they had to make a reality show out of it. So I would encourage those just to turn that on once and see why next-gen, new technology, which was pioneered in Alaska, why it's so important. Why this investment that the federal government's making is an important investment for the private sector to be a better tool for us to utilize for transportation in this country. Again, airport improvements are another piece which in my state are critical. It could be everything from just refinishing a runway to just having a gravel runway. One that brings food and supplies and medical and moving people in and out. It's a critical piece of the equation. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'm like you. I can't remember the phrase you used. I think you were less enthusiastic is the phrase you used about this amendment. I don't like the amendment as it is written today, specifically around this bill. I am anxious to get to the bigger debate, which I hope once this bill is cleared off, we get to the big debate of how we manage this deficit of this country, how we look at the long term. And I know I'll hear, yeah, this is a start, this is the way we got to start. That would make sense if this bill was started with that intent in mind. But in 2007, when this authorization expired, NextGen was just an idea. Well, this is a new investment we have to make in order to make our air travel safer, more economical, save fuel, and respond to the private sector that has requested us to get off the dime, create certainty, so they can make the investments to make their business model more effective. So again, Mr. Chairman, I had no intention really to speak today. I was in the Budget Committee.
The Senator has
I
used
wanted to
5
come down
minutes.
and say a few words. So again, I thank you for the time to allow me to say a few words from an Alaska perspective. And again, I would just emphasize this amendment is a job-killing amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.